myself. I'm Councillor Ian Edwards, and I am Chairman of the Central and South Planning Committee. A very warm welcome to ladies and gentlemen, members of the public sitting in the seats, and also to anybody who may be following us online. So there you go. We are being videoed. It is captured on YouTube. The camera is that little dark dome just forward of the public gallery. It is facing this way. So, ladies and gentlemen and members of the public, at the moment you are not on screen. However, anybody that comes forward will be captured on the screen. However, it is also important that we use microphones, otherwise none of that is heard. So that's a very warm welcome to everybody, and also those online. Normal sort of pre-meeting announcements. Fire alarms. We're not expecting a fire drill. So if the alarm does go off, please follow us officers. We will be leaving promptly. And the best route is the way we all came in, through the double doors and back out. If for whatever reason that exit is not available to us, there are other fire exits behind us. Facilities are back round the corner. You would have passed on your way in should you need to use the toilets at all. Mobile devices, very importantly, please, if everybody could make sure that their telephones are turned to vibrate or silent off altogether, that would be most helpful. Residents' feedback forms, they are provided on the seats. We do encourage you to give us feedback of how the meetings went and how we might improve those. Anything you say goes back into democratic services and isn't directly shared with members of the committee, so you can be as open and as blunt as you wish. What we're trying to do, though, is get better. Okay, a little bit about the meeting itself. You will hear some language as I dive into the agenda and about part one and part two, and I'll also talk a little bit about speaking rights. And although we are meeting in public, and as I say, it is on being watched potentially worldwide by many people on YouTube as we speak, this isn't a public meeting, so there are no general speaking rights. The only people that can address the committee are set out in the Council's constitution, and they relate to petitioners, and I will describe in a little bit more detail as we go forward. But it does mean that comment from the members of the public attending is not accepted, and I'd ask you to just refrain from comment and shouting out. Thank you. Part one and part two of the meeting, what does that talk about? Part one of the meeting is the main part of the meeting. It's where there is discussion in a public forum, and as I say, videoed, about the general planning applications. And that is the bit I expect you're most concerned with. Part two is when we go into a closed session, and we will break between the part one and part two of the meeting. And members of the public leave at that point. The video link is broken at that point. We then go into closed session to discuss matters of enforcement. And the reason that's done in closed matter is that it isn't helpful to the Council's position or to justice for public discussion about matters of evidence that could end up in a court of law. So that's why it's done privately. Those issues, though, the agenda item and the decision reached by the committee are published. So if you were interested, what did they talk about and what was the outcome, that is available. But the rest is in private. So that's part one and part two. Okay. We will march quickly through the first bit of the agenda. Bear with us just a couple of seconds whilst we go through a little bit of procedure, but it will only be a few seconds. If I can start, no, I won't do that. I've got to do a little bit more about introductions. Forgive me, it's been a long day. I've been in a planning hearing all day, and I'm a little bit frazzed. But let me introduce to you members of our planning committee. The councillors who will be voting on the applications this evening, I start on my far right-hand side, Councillor Stead, Councillor Chapman, Councillor Chamdow, Councillor Ahmed Walana and Councillor Yarrow. And on my far left-hand side, we have Councillor Eggington and Councillor Khurshid. Now, they are the voting members. As Chair, I will only vote in the event of a tie, an unusual one. There are other members sat around the table that you might wonder who are here. They are officers to help us. On my far left-hand side, Nicole Cameron, who is our legal advisor. Liz Penny, Democratic Services, and keeps the meeting in order. James Rogers, Head of Planning, giving expert planning advice. Stuart Hunt, Green Spaces, area manager, will give us advice around the green spaces and the trees issue. Meg Harani is presenting each of the applications, and Alan Tilley is here for transport and aviation comment. That's the team. And as I say, the councillors are the decision makers. Okay, so if we move into number 1, please. Apologies for absence.
Apologies were received from Councillor Morse, and Councillor Eggington is substituting for him. I haven't heard anything from Councillor Money.
Thank you very much. It is not untypical for councillors to be held up by business arrangements and other matters. However, if a councillor does enter, they are not allowed to take part in the discussion of the item if they enter midway through. So should that happen, the councillor will probably sit outside. All right, well, that is a real delay then. And he's not rushing here if he's got any sense. Okay, so there's been a breakdown in communications and apologies should have been received. So thank you very much for that, Councillor. Okay. Number 2, declarations of interest in matters coming before the meeting this evening. Colleagues, any additional declarations of interest? None. There are no matters that have been notified in advance or urgent. That's item 3. Item 4 is to confirm what I said about part 1 and part 2. There are planning applications, part 1, and there are enforcement issues tonight, part 2. So the meeting is in 2 parts. Okay, we now move, as I said, quite speedily into the meat of the business, which is number 5. And we have the application of number 16 and 18, Northfield Park. Mr. Harani, please.
Chairman, this is an application relating to 16 and 18 Northfield Park. The application is for a vehicular crossover to the front, which would serve both properties. I can just go directly to the plans. There is only one issue in relation to this application which members need to consider, and it is the impact of the crossover on a street tree. So if I can go directly to the plans. This shows the location of the proposed crossover. The tree is shown to be in that position there. And that is the tree in question. And it is on the other side that the crossover is going. And as you can see, there are a number of other trees in the road as well. There are, I think, 13 altogether. There are 3 London planes, a number of other trees which have recently all, in the last few years, been planted. So there is a number of mature trees in the road. The issue is how close the crossover comes to this tree and the damage that would occur to the roots of the tree in particular, which would lead eventually to its loss. And for that reason, your officers consider the application to be unacceptable. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Harani.
Sorry, if I can just talk you through the addendum sheet. There is a couple of issues that have been raised. Back in 2012, an application was made to our highways team for a crossover in this position. That application was denied by highways because of the impact on the tree. And the council's tree officer has also added additional comments relating to how the applications are normally considered by highways and tree officers and the guidance that they use to reach a decision. Generally, the guidance states that anything within 1 metre of the trunk of the tree is unacceptable, and that any excavations outside of that, within the 4 times the circumference of the tree, which is 2.1 metres in this case, the use of excavation plant is prohibited, so it would be hand digging that would be required. The crossover is within 1 metre of the trunk of the tree. So, thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. I have been advised that we have a petition submitted by Wasim Salim, and also the applicant, as that is a petition in support of this, we are combining the 5-minute speaking time with the applicant or agent, Parmjit Dillon. Okay, so if you would both like to come forward, and what we will do is grab you another seat, unless just one of you is speaking. Both speaking. Let me grab another seat and we'll bring that forward to you. And so whilst you make your way over, I will just talk, if I may, a little bit about the petition. Okay, between you have 5 minutes in which to address the committee, and you will see lights here. The timing is 4 minutes on a green light, 1 on an amber, and when we come to the red, I will try and bring you to a close. It is important we use the microphone, and you see that on the stand. There is a button in the centre to the front that toggles the microphone on and off. Okay, so when you speak, if you toggle that on, your 5 minutes will start at that point, and you share that time as you wish between you. Okay, so when you're comfortable, over to you, and please kick off. Thank you. Could you just use the microphone, please? Otherwise, we may not be able to hear, but importantly, it's not on record.
I was just going to say that before I start, I just wanted to make sure that everyone had seen the tree report, because it wasn't really, it wasn't attached to the actual report. So I wasn't sure whether the committee had an opportunity to see the tree report that I had submitted.
The tree report is part of the whole planning application. It is available online for us, and it is something that I have read in detail. Okay. Okay.
And there's also another letter that came from my tree specialist yesterday, which I sent across to the Democratic Services. Has that been seen? I did bring extra copies.
I haven't seen that one, no. Okay. No.
And there's some photographs which I just wanted to hand around.
If you wish to present that, hold on.
Stuart Hunt, who's acting as our tree expert, has seen the latest information, so officers would be able to respond to it.
Thank you. Then let's share that information out. Please pass that around so that we can see it. I wish the committee to be best informed to reach the most appropriate decision here. If you just give us a couple of minutes to quickly read that, that would be helpful. Thank you. Okay, colleagues, have we read the letter? Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay, when you're ready, we start with your petition, please. Thank you.
Basically, I'm the applicant in this matter. What I'd like to point out is, over the years, I have faced numerous problems in regards to parking. It's become extremely stressful for me. Each time I return home, I'm having to continuously look for parking. Most evenings, in fact, every evening, I don't have any parking. I have to either knock on my neighbours' doors or have to go onto adjacent roads to park my car, which can prove to be quite difficult because I have young children. It could be that I'm carrying files from work. It's actually quite horrendous. I mean, I've been reduced to tears many times because I've not been able to simply come home and be able to go home. I've got to sit in the car for maybe 20 minutes, 30 minutes, with no parking. As well as the parking stress, I've encountered a lot of problems with abusive commuters. If you ask them to move, or if you ask them to perhaps move the car a little bit forward or backwards, they become very, very abusive. They leave their cars. Sometimes I leave them overnight. Sometimes I leave them there for days and days, which means I don't have any parking. I'm feeling it's a little bit unfair. I've been suffering for many, many years now. I don't want to go into what I've put in my report, but I have submitted a statement which does have evidence as to what's been going on, vandalism and lots of things that have been going on with my situation. I'd like to point out there's 59 houses on this particular road, and 55 of them have driveways. Only 4 houses do not have a driveway, one of which is mine. So I don't see how, if me having a driveway is going to affect the appearance or the character of this particular road, and I don't see how the loss of one more parking space is going to affect anybody, because I already don't have any street parking as a resident on that particular street. It is apparent from the council's report that the highways have no concerns, and the local residents and my neighbours have no concerns or any objections for me having this particular driveway. The only issue that has been raised, like it was mentioned earlier, that is the tree, which may have detrimental effect. However, I have submitted an independent tree report and a further letter yesterday, which clearly states that if the works are carried out in the correct method and handheld tools are used, it can be done, and the roots will not be damaged for the tree. I am not proposing that the tree is removed. I am proposing that I can simply get into my driveway at an angle. The only thing that would need to be moved is a lamppost. I've already passed around some photographs which clearly illustrate that the other trees on the road, which have got dropped curves, even closer proximities of what I am actually proposing. So those trees are flourishing. I cannot see why my tree will not flourish if the right methods are used. I do appreciate the concerns raised in the council's report. However, I would like to point out that I feel that I have addressed these concerns sufficiently through the independent tree report, and I urge the committee today to take into account the difficulties that I'm having and the suffering that I am going through, and to grant my application. Now, may I hand over to Wasim?
Hi, good evening. Wasim, I'm the lead petitioner. Some of the things are going to be repeated, so apologies for that. I'm basically speaking as a Safe Neighbourhood Coordinator as well for Northfield Park, Northfield Close, and speaking on behalf of Parmajit Dillon. Basically, we've got 31 signatures to support the residents, and there's no objections. We've got 7 personal statements, so I hope you have them in front of you that you can look at and see where we're coming from. Parking permit schemes is going to take a long time. We're looking at 1 to 2 years. Councillor Jazz would probably confirm that. Commuters are making the situation parking stress even worse, and it's sometimes drives some of the people to tears, because the parking situation is just far worse than and it's getting worse because of Crossrail, and also Ferry Avenue, that's got controlled parking that's come in, and it's there till almost 9 o'clock. It's been extended, in fact, so it's made things much worse. Regarding trees pruned, they were done in 2015. January. If you look at reference number, your recommendations GD0/3E05, trees were replaced where needed, trees were pruned, some of them down to a bare stump. If you look at...
I need to draw you to a close here, please.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Before you go, please don't just rush off. If I could just invite you to turn the microphone off, please.
Yes.
There may be questions from the committee members to clarify anything that you've said. So before you go, colleagues, are there any questions of clarification you wish to ask the petitioner? Councillor Stead.
Thank you, Chairman. You mentioned a parking scheme, and it takes a long, long time. Have you actually applied for one? Yes.
sorry we have, and I understand Jazz Dillon, our councillor, said that it may take 1 to 2 years. So that's where we're at the moment. So I don't know what the time frame is. But unfortunately, can I say that it's not going to help Parmajit Dillon this parking controlled parking, because obviously.
So can I just ask you to constrain it?
Yeah.
I need to be fair to everybody.
Sure.
If I start allowing some people to have more speaking time than others, it causes me problems in the future. And I'm sorry, I need to draw you to a close. The question's been asked and answered. Any other questions, please? Thank you very much. If I invite you, please, to return to your seats. Councillor Dillon, you have indicated desire to speak. If you'd like to come forward. 3 minutes speaking time. Committee, please. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Glad to be back. Thank you, Chair, members of the committee. Just to clarify, Parmajit Dillon is a resident of no relation to me, for clarity. I'm here in support of the resident's application for a drop curb. You pretty much heard everything. The drop curb, if you look at a picture of a proposed curb to the right of the tree in your pack, it's very, very important. If you don't have it, I have another picture here. And you look at it closely there's a black vehicle and the tyre just here. You will see there's a piece of tarmac and there are 3 curbstones there, which are of a different colour to the other curbstones. You've got to look pretty close, but they are of a different colour.
Carry on. We will need to clarify that, because I don't believe I've seen that. We will have a look at it in a minute.
Okay,
Don't use your time up.
Previously, there was an illegal drop curb there, which was then enforced upon and put back to normal. That was some time ago, probably about 3 years ago. The tree has had no impact on it whatsoever. It hasn't died, has had no effect, it's flourishing. So it should have been included in the report. Unfortunately, it wasn't. But as you can see, a drop curb there has had no effect to the tree, and it's been put back to what it was like previously. The applicant is proposing that the drop curb isn't going as close to that tree, so there will be even less harm. It's an important point, should be noted. And that's it, really. There's nothing else to say.
Thank you. Can we just share that photograph around, please? Thank you. Colleagues, whilst the photo's coming around, any questions at all for Councillor Chamdal? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. There's a figure in our addendum sheet which says on the page 2, the construction of a crossover would require an excavation of around 300 millimetres, and the applicant's expert or consultant has put in there 4th paragraph. He would expect it to be in the region of 200 millimetres, which is considered a normal construction. Could we have some
Is this a question? Is this a question?
Oh, sorry.
For the councillor?
I thought it finishing.
No. I said, is there any questions or clarification for the councillor?
Sorry, Chairman.
No, that's okay. That's fine. We will come to that immediately.
I beat the gun.
You do. It is a question to Councillor Dillon. Thank you.
It's probably something I should have asked the applicant, but there are 59 houses. 54 of them have dropped curbs, leaving 5 without drop curbs. When she comes home, there's nowhere to park. Is that because the other 5 applicants have parked in the only remaining spaces, whether if she had a drop curb, she'd be in her own drive?
In part it is, and in part it's because other roads adjacent to those have had parking schemes implemented. This particular scheme at the moment is part of a wider scheme that involves Crossrail and Botwell Ward, and it's taking some time the consultation is taking quite a bit of time. We're about 6 months in. I've asked for an update. There is no update at the moment. We don't know when it's going to come. So, the applicant does really need this drop curb.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Invite you to return. Right. Now, we may open up to general questions, clarification. Councillor Chamdal. Go again.
I refer to the question I asked previously.
I'll bring in Mr Hunt here, please, if I may. Thank you.
Hello, Councillor. The standard construction of a drop curb with O'Hara Brothers, our term contractor, requires a dig of 300 millimetres or more than that for haunching and the curbstone. So the curbstones are 150 millimetres and the haunching underneath are a further 150 millimetres. That's where the 300 millimetres comes from. I've got a plan here of a similar construction, if that would help.
I mean, by all means, if you wish to pass it around, it is the standard specification that council uses for the construction of drop curbs. It gives the dimensions. Councillor Eggington.
Thank you, Chair. Stuart, would the work which was done to rectify the earlier illegal drop curb also have been 300 millimetres?
Very difficult to say, Councillor, because I'm not sure whether it was just an overlay of bitmac over the top or whether it was a proper dig-out construction. Hopefully, using NJUG guidance, it wasn't a full dig-out because you would have hoped that wouldn't have been done if unnecessary. So I'm afraid I don't know, not being a highway engineer.
Okay. Do you want to come back?
Yeah, I mean, it's just that my thought is that if it was, then clearly the damage would already have been done and one should have been able to see it having an effect on the tree. I think these sorts of trees are fairly hardy, aren't they? They've got a very vigorous growth for the sorts of situations, and I don't know whether there's any problem with the pavement there, but often with it round these trees there tends to be some sort of, the root system is kind of actually lifting up the pavements. I don't know whether that's happening there. It was very difficult to tell from those photographs.
I think because the bitmac's been laid fairly recently, there isn't trace of the roots that you would normally see. From my inspection today, certainly there are signs of roots growing in that direction, which would undoubtedly, with a 300 millimetre dig, need to be severed to enable the crossover to go in.
Okay. Before I come to Councillor Chandal, can you explain, Mr Hunt, please, a little bit more about the 1 metre that you talk around? Why is that so important, and what is the issue there? And then, if answer that first. Thank you.
So the National Joint Utilities Guidance is a guidance across streetworks throughout the country, which has been adopted by us in our dealing with street trees. Basically, the main structural roots and adjacent to the tree would be within that metre zone. And then beyond the metre zone, you use the circumference of the tree, which in this case is about 524 millimetres in diameter, times that by 4 to give a precautionary zone as well. And in that precautionary zone, there will be tree roots that would be affected by that work. So there are things that could be used. An air spade or hand digging, that kind of thing, but often there will be roots in that first 200 and 300 millimetre zone.
Okay, and for now, the clarification is probably coming into one of our planning colleagues. Is the application here necessarily going to impinge upon that 1 metre exclusion zone that national guidance has around the tree?
Thank you, Chairman. It is within the 1 metre zone. And also I can say that when roots are damaged, it's not immediately apparent, and it doesn't become apparent on the health of the tree for a while. So it may take quite a time before you see the trees starting to die off, as it were, slowly. And so if roots have been damaged, you won't see in a month or 2 months the tree starting to go.
Thank you. Is there any prospect of the drop curb being moved such that it didn't enter this 1 metre around the tree?
I think that it could be moved, but the issue is that it possibly isn't sufficient to access number 16.
Okay, so it doesn't present a solution to the latest problem. Okay, thank you. Councillor Chandal, you indicated, then Councillor.
Thank you, Chairman.
Once again on the report from the applicant's expert on page 2, he's made a statement that there's numerous similar trees along the road where this procedure has been carried out. Do we know of any? And if this statement is, we can sort of put any weight to his statement?
There are a number of trees in the borough, in the road, that have drop curbs to them very adjacently. The National Joint Utility Guidance came in 2007, which we've been using since that date. Yes, trees trees are living organisms, and each will be affected in a different way. So we just use that guidelines as what is our current standard.
Sorry, do we know of any trees in that road, this particular road, that have actually had this procedure in terms of a drop curb and the trees are okay? Do we know? There are examples in the information that the applicant provided. I haven't inspected each individual tree to comment on its health. The photographs aren't really good enough to do that.
Okay. Councillor Aquilana.
Thank you, Chairman. So one expert report says that the drop curb will be detrimental to the tree. The other says that if handheld tools are used and the correct method are used, then there is no danger to the tree. It is a bit confusing for us to understand why is that, why the two reports from two different people are different.
It's a fair question and consideration. Can you cast some light on that, please, Ms. Hunt?
I can only comment on my understanding of tree health and my knowledge of the borough's trees, which is gained over the last 34 years working in Hillingdon. So that's where my guidance comes from. That's where my professional knowledge comes from. I can't comment on the other professional.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Yarrow.
Thank you, Chairman. The last paragraph on page 1 of their consultancy reports says, from past experiences of similar construction, it's extremely unlikely that any significant routes will be revealed, and as the works will be under full arboricultural supervision to ensure that no routes are damaged, if in the unlikely event of any routes being revealed, then works will cease and alternative measures taken of bridging them. Could you explain how you bridge it and not leave a bump on the surface of the crossover? And that's a pretty significant statement of saying no damage will be done, and if it is, we will stop. Is that a comment that he could make, and would we and could further charges be levied against the applicant to say you have to do this extra work in order that the exploratory work now reveals that it can be built, but it's going to cost X?
It's both a planning and a trees matter, that one.
I'm unsure of how that would be achieved. Once the tarmac's opened up and those routes are exposed, I'm unsure of how that bridging would occur. Certainly my own personal knowledge is that once those the roots have been exposed in that way, the damage in many ways has been done, and there isn't a solution that I'm aware of that can bridge a route and provide a crossover in that way.
So it's not the actual cutting of the route you're saying that does the damage, it's the exposure of that route to the air?
And indeed cutting the route, because I'm unaware of a bridging solution, so the route would have to be cut for the crossover to be installed.
Okay, Councillor Khurshid. Could you please use the microphone? Sorry, just to capture the voice.
The CPZ was coming very, very soon. Do you know where we are with that at this moment in time?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I've spoken to my colleagues. A petition was received requesting a residence parking management scheme.
In response, residents were informally consulted, and the outcome of that consultation was support for the introduction of a parking management scheme. So now the formal process of doing the traffic regulation orders to introduce that scheme has now begun, and as part of that there will then be what we call formal consultation, where residents will see the laminated posters on lampposts. Should there be objections to that formal consultation, a objection report would be written to the Cabinet Member for Planning, Transportation and Recycling. So what happens next, whether there would be any formal objections, whether there would be any objections to the formal consultation, we do not yet know at this stage. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, officer.
Okay, colleagues, let me try and bring this together. It's a straightforward matter. It is solely turns on the tree. The local authority's policy is to resist the loss of a healthy tree, of which there is no argument. This is a healthy tree, and it is part of the street scene, and I would expect it to be a reasonably valued part of the street scene. It makes it look quite attractive. So the supposition is that we are not for having it removed. The debate is about whether or not a drop curb could be installed without detriment to the tree, and on that there is a difference of opinion in experts, and there's probably a different in judgment to be made. That's how I see it. I'm going to risk causing some real difficulties to myself by asking a question. Is there any way that exploratory work can be conducted to determine whether or not the construct of this would necessarily cut routes that are greater than the 25 centimetres said? I mean, is it possible that it could be constructed such that didn't happen, and could it be constructed under supervision such that if we came across it, it was ceased? Is that a possibility, both in planning terms and also in just technical terms?
I mean, we're advised by the tree officers, so if they feel that it is possible, then that is what they will tell us. They had the report in front of them. They clearly feel that the tree would be damaged in the works that are being proposed, so they have advised us that the application should be refused, and that is. But whether that sort of special works can be carried out, we haven't sought that advice, I don't think. So I don't know whether Alan Stewart, would be able to advise us on that or not.
As a way forward, I mean, their consultant is saying that at no point will routes above 25 millimetres be severed. So is it possible to condition this construct of the dropped over curb such that it is done without tools, power tools, that it's done by hand excavation, that it's supervised, and it is conditional upon no routes above 25 millimetres having to be severed? And if it does, then the works stop, it's backfilled, and it doesn't happen.
The works are carried out by the council, so all of that would have to be done by the council and the highways section. So whether they would be prepared to do that or can do that, I wouldn't know.
I mean, my expectation is that once we go from machine excavation to hand excavation, the cost goes up considerably. And so there would need to be further discussion, one would expect. But that is not a planning consideration. The planning consideration is whether or not it can be done. Can it be done?
Equally, as soon as you start excavating around those routes, damage is being caused, whether by hand tools or not, because the bitmap has to be broken away, etc. And damage is occurring to the tree each time that is done.
I do appreciate that, but would the damage be to such an extent that it would result in the loss of the tree? I do know that there are root pruning goes on, and I know that the pruning of the tree itself goes on. So not every instance of damage results in such significant harm as to result in the loss of the tree.
For sure, and equally, one can't comment on without seeing each individual case. It's not been done in this borough before, therefore I can't really comment anymore.
Two things. Firstly, I'd just like to share the comment from a legal officer, which is we have very clear guidance on this, and deviation from the guidance is difficult and damaging. And Mr. Roger, you wish to come in?
Yeah, if I can, I think members just need to either approve or refuse this particular application. I mean, London trees are a hardy tree. I don't think either consultant disagrees on that, but as I understand it, if this application is approved, there is a risk to the health of the tree, and nothing can. That I think is a factual thing, and I don't think there's any particular bespoke conditions that could be used. And I'd actually have slight concerns if we did too complicated a condition, because the borough's got hundreds of London plane trees, and I don't. It's not uncommon for people to wish to do drop curbs near trees.
Thank you. I did think I was opening a can of worms, but I wanted to do so to enable the most full and proper debate. So there you go, colleagues. We have before us quite a simple matter. That this is, the policy of the council is to protect trees of this size. It is national guidance that we don't do it within 1 metre. The choice is quite simply, do you or do you not observe the national guidance and the local authority's policy of preserving the tree, or do you approve the planning permission? Councillor
Just
Hillingdon.
ask one question. With the proposals as they are, what proportion of the circumference of the tree is going to be affected, or what proportion of the roots is going to be affected in the worst case?
In planning terms, the root protection zone of the tree would be somewhere in the region of 6 metres, so 6 metres from the trunk in circumference. National Joint Utilities take a little bit more of a flexible view on that, because obviously trees in streets are in a hostile environment and not necessarily out in the open field. Again, it's very difficult because of the hostile environment of the tree is growing in, where it's finding its moisture, where it's finding its nutrients. It's very difficult to say what percentage of its root plate would be damaged.
Would I be right in thinking that probably the nutrient it's getting from underneath pavements and underneath the road is going to be relatively small, whereas it's more likely to be getting a larger proportion from actually the garden of the houses which it's next to?
The area we're talking about is pretty much hard surface everywhere, so it will be gaining its moisture from the soil under the ground. There's no rich pickings anywhere in that area, apart from the garden, which would be under concrete.
Okay, colleagues, I do need now to begin to move this forward. It is quite a simple question here before us. Councillor Ahmed Wallana.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a difficult after hearing from the officer, and we asked so many questions, but fortunately we have to move with the officer's recommendations to refuse it.
Thank you. So we've had a proposal that we go with the officer's recommendations for refusal. Is that seconded? Seconded by Councillor Chapman. And show of hands in support of that motion. 2, 3, 4, 5. And against? 1. Thank you very much. I'm very sorry that the planning application has failed, and I understand the circumstance you're in, and I'm sorry that it's failed. But I hope you understand the reasons why it has failed. Okay, we now turn to agenda item 7. Thank you, Stuart. Land to the rear of 119 Harefield Road. Mr. Harani, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This relates to land which originally formed part of the garden of 119 Harefield Road. It has been severed from that property and is a standalone site. The application before you is for a storage and a garage/storage building, which is to be used for the parking of vehicles and domestic storage. The size and scale of the proposal is considered to comply with the Council's normal guidelines and standards as set out in its supplementary planning document on residential extensions, and its impact on adjoining occupiers is also considered acceptable. The issue for members to consider is obviously its use, given that it is not related to any of the properties that are surrounding it. There is a proposed condition which restricts its use quite severely, and we would expect that condition to be enforced should it not comply with those requirements. So I can just take members through the plans. This is the proposed, and as you can see, it is a double garage size. It is, as I said originally, it's access from this rear access road serving other properties in Harefield Road, and these are other hard standings and other buildings which surround the property or the site, and the application site itself is this, and work, as you can see, has commenced prior to the application being decided on, but it has ceased once our enforcement officers informed him that planning permission was required and that he didn't have it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Harani. We have petitioner Mr. Tim Jackson present. You should come forward, sir. You have 5 minutes speaking time. Sorry, could you use the microphone? Sorry.
Thank you. The link that we were given on the letter inviting us to the meeting doesn't work, and so we've literally only had half an hour to actually have a look at the agenda item. So I'm requesting that actually can we push this back by a period, please?
We're not prepared to change the planning committee. What I would be prepared to do is to give you an extra few minutes, because we can set back the hearing of the petition till after the next item, which is agenda item 8. That will give you probably another 5 minutes. Otherwise, we must go ahead with it.
Even though we've not had access to the information, because the information in this item is very different to what has been said verbally. So we feel we're kind of discussing something very different.
Let me bring in the head of planning here.
The plans for this haven't changed since it was lodged in March. So
yeah, so the items on the planning part, I agree, haven't changed. We were not aware that there's another part of the website which has no link back to the original planning, where the agenda item here is displayed, apparently.
So you put together a petition against an application. Yeah. I mean, if you would like to present that petition, great. If you wish to put forward a different petition, that is not what is before us. The petition is the one that was submitted against the planning application.
And you're not concerned that the fact that we haven't had...
You have quite simply, out of courtesy, I will now take agenda item 8. That gives you a few minutes to consider this position. We will then go ahead and allow this petition to be heard. You may or may not give it. That is your choice. Okay. The applicant, though, will have the right of response, and if they are present, they will wish to speak or not, is their choice.
Yeah.
Okay, and we will conclude with the decision this evening. But, as you've asked, I will give you some extra minutes if you wish, please, to go outside, and we will now turn to agenda item 8, please. If you turn off the microphone, retire from the seat, we will go to agenda item 8 and consider 280 the High Street. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. This application relates to 280 High Street and is an application for extract duct and condensing units at roof level. It follows the service of an enforcement notice which failed to comply with the Council's noise standards. This has been rectified and the proposed works are considered acceptable. If I can go directly to the plans, then it's probably easier for me to point out the issues that are. The site is this particular one. It is in a conservation area, and the actual units that we're talking about are these particular units. The surrounding area is all in commercial use. There are no residential units above the existing retail units on the ground floor or commercial units on the ground floor. There are mostly offices above. The nearest residential properties will in fact be in Randalls when if it's done. So there's no residential impact. The complaints we received in relation to noise were from the occupiers of the offices above the units. And as I say, the noise issues have been rectified, and we've had no complaints since that work was carried out. If I can go back to this plan, these are pitch roofs which in essence hide all of this equipment from the street, and you can't see any of that from the street. If I go to the photograph, this is probably as close as we can get to the site, and you can see some of the equipment, very small parts of it, but it's mostly hidden and it's behind these roofs that I was showing you. So in visual impact terms, it's acceptable, and also in terms of its impact on adjoining occupiers, it's also acceptable. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Harani. Quite a straightforward matter, colleagues.
Sorry, there was a small addendum sheet which changed a number of the plan numbers which were incorrect on the original report, so that's requesting that the plan numbers are changed in the conditions as well as within the plan sheet, the plans list.
Thank you very much. Mr. Chandal, Councillor Chandal, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the officer's report is quite comprehensive in that it's required, is out of the view of the public. I think we should move with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you very much. Councillor Yarrow, you seconding? Show of hands, please, on that one. Unanimous, that is agreed. Thank you very much. Now I'll return back to the petition item at number 7. Mr. Jackson, if you'd like to come forward, I give you the opportunity to present your petition. Remind you that to use the microphone, please, the button ahead. You will have 5 minutes when you start your speaking time. 4 minutes will be shown with a green light, 1 with the amber, and then I must draw you to a close, okay?
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for those few minutes. As you'll be able to tell, I'm not practiced in this type of debate, presentation of information, so forgive me. I don't know where to start now. I think the fundamental thing at the back of all, I'm here to represent about 6 houses, and the thing which is the common theme which is coming through from all those people is it's a very significant change to the character of the existing environment. That back lane is effectively the playground for 4 under 12-year-old children. They play football in it, they run up and down it, they ride their bikes, their scooters, their whatever. And the idea of having somebody coming along and using it as a storage facility with no real limit on how much traffic can go up and down it, and what's going to happen, is obviously very concerning to us. So what has been a very nice, protected, secluded kind of, residential environment feels very threatened by this new development, and that's really what's triggered. That's what triggered this. So I think fundamentally we're saying that it's a significant change to the character of the neighbourhood. We also feel it's a reduction in what I think is called the residential amenity. Having vans going up and down this back lane, I think, is going to detract from the residential amenity. We're concerned on lots of grounds. We're concerned that it's actually very tight space, and that therefore there's going to be either reversing in or reversing out from this lot. Again, we've got children playing. We've got things going on down that lane. It feels a very unsafe thing to be doing. There was no indication of whether it's going to be once a year or 20 times a day. That's one of our concerns. If I've gone on to your local plan, the development plan, Harefield Road does appear to be part of the archaeological priority zone, and I believe that means that the person also needs to apply for an architectural assessment and evaluation. Again, I think that's the case. Going through the local plan, there's nothing to suggest that there's a desire to have a change in use like this or a change in character, so it seems out of keeping with the local plan. All the conversations that have been had between the purchaser and the local residents have been about it being a commercial unit. I believe the person works at Heathrow or has links with Heathrow, is looking to make it a storage facility. This is why now seeing in the item that's been, I've forgotten what it's called now, item whatever it is, saying that it's just going to be a garage and a storage facility and something, feels very different to what we were preparing to try and argue against. There's real concern, excuse me, the real concern that this development is really just a start of something. Originally it was going to be a garage because a guy lived up the road, but it turns out they want to park a couple of cars. Then it turns out it's not a person up the road, it's somebody coming in from outside. Then it's a garage, then it's a double garage. Then they start building a double garage, and it's got a double skin wall. That means heating for most situations. So it just doesn't seem to stack up, and we're very concerned that this is just a thin end of a wedge, and that there's no intent really to have this as some little storage facility. Well, it's there, isn't it? You don't put a double skin wall in with insulation. There's a trench that piece of plywood there is a trench, and it looks like preparing for services for water and electricity, potentially. Nothing about it seems to be, I'm on 4 minutes, thank you. Double skin, concerned about somebody who would offer alcohol and gifts to other people living around because he wants to buy more land. So the person has approached all the other adjoining properties asking to buy their land. It feels like we've got a thin end of a wedge here. And then access can be yeah, there are reasons why if other people sell their land, he's got better access. Where am I going? When the land was originally partitioned off, it was surely for residential use, not storage facilities. And this now says not for commercial storage, but we'll see. We're worried there's going to be further developments. There's every indication that there's intent to extend the development, like approaching other neighbours. Worried that this is going to set a precedent. Worried that somebody who's going to spend many tens of thousands of pounds is going to want to make their money somehow. And it doesn't feel appropriate for a residential environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If I can draw you to a conclusion at that point. Thank you. That is helpful. Colleagues, are there any questions of clarification for the petitioner? No, thank you. So if I could invite you please to return to your seat. Mr. Sandhu, present, you wish to speak? Please come forward, sir. Again, remind you about the use of the microphone. It's the button at the front. Thank you.
Yes,
5 minutes speaking time.
Sure.
Start at your own convenience. Thank you.
Good evening, all. I'm a resident of the same borough at the moment. I seek advice from the duty planner prior to purchasing this part of the land. As to I'm going to build a garage for my storage of my car and my personal items for the summer, which I use for the garden furniture. And I was told by the planning officer, duty planner, that I could make up to 30 to 40 square meters, not more than 2.5 meters high. So which I purchased the property, got it all done, spoke to the neighbors as well, and he said, where do I work? I said, I work for British Airways. And he was saying, oh, so what are you going to do up here? I said, I'm not going to bring an aircraft and park in here. Just as a joke. And that's why they're assuming that as I work for British Airways, I'm going to bring all the tools and equipment from the airline and park it here. I'm a retired person now. Right, I started building this in February for use of my personal storage for my car when I'm going abroad, because I work for the airline. I've got my perks from them to travel all over the world. I just live around the corner from about a quarter of a mile from this land, and I've got no garage in my place. So this is the only place I can store is my car when I go on my holidays, and my garden tools, which I use for the summer. there's no electricity or no water in there, and I don't intend to have one, right? If this place is left empty, there'll be a lot of people throwing rubbish and all that. So I'm just making a double wall, make it more secured. I'll only be using this place about 4 or 5 times a year, that's the most. And that's all for my personal use only. Now, the gentleman is saying they're talking drinks and giving drinks to the neighbors. I mean, drinks can't buy them. It is all that Mr. Gill was so good to me. He provided me electricity if he wants to use it, and I just gave him a bottle of vodka. He said that's what he drinks. It's not, I'm trying to buy drinks and get him on my side. As I said, I'm only using this for my personal use and for my own storage. And the most I'll be using is about 4 or 5 times a year. It's not for any commercial use at all. I mean, I'm sure the council can put the conditions in that I won't be using for commercial. And the deeds I've got and I've signed for this land is that I'm not supposed to do any business up there, on this piece of part of the land.
Thank you. So have you concluded?
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful for that. Councillor Ahmed Maulana.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for your presentation. You did mention that you went to seek the advice from the officer. And was it written or verbal?
It is verbal from John, the duty planner, John. It was all verbal.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, sir. I invite you to return to your seat.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Colleagues, what appears on the surface to be quite a straightforward matter, however, the petitioner has expressed concerns about the impact of the development, putting forward the proposal that it is a change to the character of the area, which is presently used as a play area. There's a reduction in residential amenity caused by what is perceived to be going to be frequent movements in the lane, concerns around the intensity of use, archaeological concerns, and change of use. They're the items that have been put forward. So if I could just come to you, Mr. Harani. First one, the archaeological issue. Is that a matter here?
It is in an archaeological priority area, but generally with sort of schemes of this scale, they're not sufficient to disturb any archaeological remains and so on. It would have to be mainly of a large-scale development that would result in that. It's not sufficient. I mean, the digging that's required is not of sufficient depth and so on to disturb archaeological remains.
Thank you very much. If you could please help us around what, from the planning perspective, you believe to be the character of the area in which this development is happening, and whether or not you believe a change in the character is occurring. This
is, in essence, a rear access road. Children may play on it, but it is a vehicular access road. It is accessed, as you can see, for parking of vehicles, and the proposal is to provide a parking area. So, in essence, it does, and there are other outbuildings, garages that are situated which are accessed off this road. So we don't consider that this is a change in the character of the area.
Thank you. Could you expand upon any change of use in land use?
Again, I mean, it isn't, as I said in my presentation, the site is not related to any of the properties that surround it, but its use is, in essence, a domestic use. It's for the parking of a vehicle, and we've tried to cover all the issues that may arise in terms of its use. And condition 3, we believe, restricts the use quite severely to, in essence, the parking of private motor vehicles and storage, and it's not used for any form of residential accommodation, for any business purposes, and these purposes may include car repairs, maintenance, which may take place here, or even for commercial storage or parking. So even to let this unit for commercial parking would require further permission from us.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, open this to the floor. Councillor Yarrow and then Councillor Chamdale.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, this is actually in my ward, and having heard both parties' versions of what's being built, I have to say that I'm more relaxed about it, having heard that it's only going to be used 4 or 5 times a year, and what it's going to be used for, which is a car when the gentleman's on holiday, and I think he said street furniture, garden furniture when he's away from home. If that's the case, it certainly, I don't believe he's really altering the nature of the area at all. I understand the concerns of the objectors, and all I would say to them is get together, sit down, have a drink, and try and establish a rapport and believe each other, and it'll all work out fine. I'm prepared to move that we accept the officer's recommendations at this point in time, pending anybody else wanting to speak.
Thank you very much. Councillor Chandal, you indicated, then Councillor Stead.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Stead.
Yes, some of what I was going to say has just been covered, Chairman. It's about the conditions that we put on this.
Are you comfortable with condition 3, or are you wishing to suggest an expansion?
No, as long as the conditions that are there are strongly enforceable and everything else, then I've got no problem.
Okay, so we've had the proposal has been put by Councillor Yarrow, seconded by Councillor Chandal. We go with the officer's recommendation, which is to approve this application, drawing attention to the condition 3, which restricts it to domestic use only. Okay, could show of hands please on that? That's unanimous. Thank you. Planning permission is granted. Thank you. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, the public, we must draw part 1 of the meeting to a close now and moved into closed session of part 2. If we could break the video link, please, that would be helpful. Thank you. Just a short pause whilst the room is cleared and the video is broken.